Well, it is 8:15. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to do an on-time start today. Thanks so much for getting here. It was a little dark, I have to say, when I left to get here early, so thanks so much for making the effort to be here. Good morning. I am Sarah Reynolds-Lasser, Vice President of Business Development for Aspen Chamber Resort Association. On behalf of the Chamber, we really want to thank you for being here today. These gatherings are one of the ways we stay connected with the businesses that make up the fabric of our community. We do want to share a little bit about the agenda today. We want to thank our nonprofits that were here. Thanks for tabling with us during breakfast. We do have a great lineup this morning, including panel discussions with our local governments and community partners. I also want to point out that today's program will be aired on GrassRoots, so a big shout out to John and Tom at GrassRoots. Thanks for being here. And we also encourage you to stick around after these conversations. Get your headshot updated. If you have a round headshot that you use on Facebook as well, it's this calling for you to get that headshot updated. And we also have 2 education sessions that will be offered. The one being presented by longtime hospitality professional Catriona Hemberry, and then also our local business leaders, Candace Cross and Kim Allen. So certainly want to welcome you all to stay and enjoy that as well. We want to share a little bit about what ACRA has been up to this year. Earlier in the year, we hosted listening sessions with over 130 businesses across the valley. We heard from hospitality leaders, retailers, construction companies, nonprofits, professional services, and many others. And we wanted to better understand what they are experiencing right now and what issues are shaping the future of doing business here in Aspen. 3 themes consistently rose to the top. Each of these systems plays a critical role in the health of our economy. Transportation affects how employees get to work, housing affects whether they can live here at all, and both of these affect employees' overall quality of life and decision to stay here in the Roaring Fork Valley. And the airport, of course, connects our community to global visitors and markets. Now, we are going to hear directly from these leaders working on these issues and begin thinking about how we will move forward together. I'll now turn over to Debbie Braun, President and CEO of Aspen Chamber, who will guide our conversations and our first discussion focused on transportation. That'd be helpful.
Hello, everyone.
She can project.
Hello, thank you for joining us this morning. Is it just me, or did daylight savings time take us all out for a breakfast today? I mean, my goodness, it was tough getting up and commuting in this morning. So I'm excited to talk about transportation. So good morning, everyone. Transportation really does affect just about every business in this room, whether it's how your employees are getting to work, how visitors arrive, or simply how long it takes to move around the valley. It directly affects our economy and our workforce. Today, we want to start off and kind of take a step back and look at transportation from 3 different perspectives. First, what the City of Aspen is working on with the Entrance to Aspen project. Second, the rural transit through RFTA. And third, some emerging ideas coming from the Transportation Coalition for the 21st Century. This is really a soft launch of the coalition's work. The goal today isn't really to finalize solutions, but to start socializing ideas with the business community so people understand what may be ahead and where your voice is going to matter. Let's start this morning with Pete Strucker. I'm going to turn around here, our city manager. Hi, Pete.
Good morning.
Are you on?
Yes.
Yeah, then we can hear you. Pete, the Entrance to Aspen project has been studied for decades and now carries really a significant price tag. Businesses often ask whether it will reduce congestion or primarily improve safety in transit. From your perspective, what's going on with the entrance?
Thanks for asking that question. If I can take a step back and maybe go through a couple of quick slides, set the tone a little bit. I would like to, I can't tell which slide we're on. Is it the one on the left? Yes. Do we have the entrance slide on the left? Thank you very much. Sorry, technology. Yes, I mean, we've been in this process for 30-plus years. I think right now we really have some strong momentum, and we have eager partners to really bring this forward. We know that if you've lived under a rock, this is going to be new for you, but I really don't think that's going to be the case. And I really want to start off with, this is not a city asset, and that's important for everybody to really understand. The entrance to Aspen, really the Highway 82 corridor, the Castle Creek Bridge, is an asset that is owned by CDOT. So to get to the initial elephant in the room, if you will, the cost of this project is something that the community itself really isn't going to have to bear in the long run. This is something that has to have state and federal partners. The city will luckily get to be involved in this process, and so we do have an opportunity to help influence everything. We may also have to be making some contributions like we are today in terms of kind of advancing the initiative forward, and we're working towards design with these partners. So we do have some costs, but it is not the nugget in the room. That big nugget is not something that we're going to have to stomach ourselves. I'm on the, thank you. I think
You're on that really big slide right there.
Thank you very much. It's also important to note that we are moving this forward with a group of individuals. So there are 3 different teams really activated right now. There's a project management team, which is comprised of CDOT and FHWA, the Federal Highway Transit Authority, and then ourselves as Aspen. And that's great. So we're in the room. But that group is really looking at state and federal regulations and making sure that the project that's going to be delivered responds to all of those items. We also have smaller task force that are really actually responding to things like historic preservation or the wildlife corridors or connectivity of trails, things of that nature that need kind of those immediate experts to respond to the minor details. But what I have on the screen here is the project leadership team, and that team is really comprised of a diverse group within this community, and it's got everybody from emergency response to government to our transit authorities and partners, as well as some other major employers within the valley. And so this is the team that's really the most important to make sure that the project that's being considered and moved forward is one that's going to answer to the desires of the community. Real quickly, there's been questions about why not a full evaluation versus a reevaluation. I do want to emphasize that a reevaluation is looking to expedite movement on this project. We have a lot of momentum. We have a lot of interested partners. This is the quickest way to bring something forward for the community. It still is required to respond to all of the initial concerns from the community, things like environmental friendliness, mass transit, safety. So the desire to continue with a reevaluation process is all about expediency, and it's also to not open up the opportunity for a reeval which will actually pull back on the controls for the city or give the city an opportunity to be more involved in the process. It starts turning things back over to the state and the federal authority. So what's nice about the reeval is it's not set in stone with the preferred alternative from 20-some years ago. We still have opportunities to make modifications, and some of those are listed here on the screen to kind of give you a sense that we are still trying to tweak the original idea and try to find ways to make it better. As we kind of reevaluate against the current conditions, there might be opportunities to make adjustments. And finally, if you're interested in learning more, we are having a public engagement coming up on March 26th at CMC. We really want to see folks attend. The mayor made this announcement actually at the meeting last night. We also have a new website that folks can go to learn a lot more about what the past was like, where we're at today, and we'll keep continually updating that site to show folks what's on the horizon.
That was a lot of words, Pete, so I have one basic question, which is, what's the biggest outcome businesses should realistically expect from the entrance to Aspen project?
Yeah, I think the biggest outcome is going to be a secure way in and out of town. So as you said, safety is one of the biggest priorities for this community. That actually also plays into the health of the community overall. If we have an aging a piece of infrastructure that won't perform in the future, that's detrimental to our economic vitality here. So I think the business community certainly wants that piece of the project to go forward, not just for safety, but for our economic health overall.
I think we should all center ourselves in the fact that it's probably not going to change our commuting time too much.
Yes, I don't think that this is essentially here to deliver major improvements on transit times. It does improve some things in some aspects. We are looking at ways, like I said, to modify the current PA that can actually have some impacts, things like reducing lights along the way or streamlining as opposed to going through an S-curve. That might help.
Yeah. I think the other thing that business wants to know is like predictability of a timeline. So what timeline should the business community realistically plan around the project, and what disruption should employers expect along the way?
Yeah. Timeline is going to be something that we can't really answer to right now. We're in the middle of a reevaluation process. It's a 15 to 18 month process, so we're partway through, maybe halfway through that process right now. That is intended to kick out design drawings. Once we have design drawings, that allows us to then start looking for prioritization in the state process. But again, this is a state project, so we are competing against other projects within our region. I will say that our project does tend to be slated fairly high already in that hierarchy, but it's going to be difficult to decide when the state is ready and when they can commit the funds.
Okay, just one last question. If you had to pick one transportation improvement that realistically could move the needle the most for Aspen in the next 5 years, what do you think it would be? Dream big.
Dream big. I do think that the easiest solution is, again, influencing folks on their personal vehicle transit choices. We do already have programs stood up for that. We do already have some partners that are helping us with mass transit, and certainly that is the easiest way to kind of continue to chip away at this bigger nugget. Infrastructure takes a lot of time, and I think this is the more immediate solution.
Thank you, Pete. That helps frame what the city is working on and how the entrance to Aspen conversation affects that broader system. But infrastructure alone doesn't solve congestion. Transit plays a huge role in how people move up and down the valley. So Kurt, our favorite guest from RFTA, let me bring you into the conversation now. Kurt, RFTA has been one of the most successful rural transit systems in the country, and you really do play a major role in how employees commute into Aspen. So my first question is, for many businesses here, the biggest transportation issue isn't visitors, it's workforce. From your perspective, what investments or changes would you make the biggest difference in helping employees reliably commute up and down the valley?
Yeah, so would you like me to go through the slides first or answer the question?
I think go through the slides and hopefully that will get us to the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, hello everyone. Kurt Ravenschlag with RFTA. I have a couple slides here just to share with you all in terms of where RFTA is at, particularly coming out of the last 6 years following the pandemic. The pandemic really impacted public transportation globally very significantly in terms of reduced ridership and people that are willing to come back to public transportation. I have on the slide here showing what our trajectory has looked like coming out of that pandemic in 2020. What you don't see is 2019. Our annual boardings were over 5 million. So what this is showing is we have recovered from the pandemic. We are back to full staffing, and we're back to our pre-pandemic ridership levels. Something that we tried out this past year that hopefully all of you in the room heard something about. We tried out a pilot zero fare effort in October and November. That was really geared towards, and this came out of our climate action plan, was looking at ways that we can encourage more folks to use public transportation, get out of their single occupant vehicle, also helps with congestion mitigation. There's a lot of questions that we've had historically about the impacts of a zero fare and how that would affect us operationally. So we tried that out in October and November, and we saw that there was about a 20 to 30% increase in demand due to the fare being eliminated. So that helps us be prepared if we were ever to do this again, particularly in a peak season. We know where we would have to be prepared from a staffing standpoint, equipment, expanded park and rides, housing, staffing. So this was very valuable information for us to know what we would need to do to be prepared for that. What I really want to share with everyone is something that I'm probably most excited about this year is RAFT is undertaking its first master plan. This is really going to help us be able to look 20, 30 years out and collectively, as a region, pull together a transportation vision for our needs. Historically, we've kind of been more reactionary to the problems of our valley, and this is an opportunity for us all to work together, all the jurisdictions, all the various stakeholders, interested parties, to collectively pull together a vision for what I call our regional travel shed that impacts not only the Upper Valley, Mid Valley, Lower Valley, Colorado River Valley, to where we can all be working together and have a vision that we're all collectively working towards. As part of that effort, our first task is doing a service optimization study. How can we just be more effective and efficient with our existing services? How can we address current problems that exist today? Areas of interest of this study are obviously the entrance to Aspen. That is a major choke point for us being able to serve the Upper Valley. The Rio Grande Corridor, for those who may not know, RAFTA owns and manages 32 miles of the Rio Grande Corridor. The additional 10 miles is owned by Pitkin County and managed by Pitkin County and the City of Aspen. So that is a huge asset for our valley when it comes to transportation. And the part of this plan is going to be looking at how we can use that asset in the future to help meet our mobility needs. Our bus rapid transit service that we launched in 2013, that has lots of opportunity for improvement. We really want to be able to look at how we can extend that to connect to the I-70 corridor. It currently stops short of that in South Glenwood Springs, which creates a lot of congestion issues in the city of Glenwood. And then looking at Western Garfield County, we know that that's where a lot of our population is migrating to, and we need to find ways to be able to effectively connect them to the broader region. So that is what RAFT is working on. And as it relates to what would be the single most effective thing to help move people in this region, for us, from our standpoint, RAFT views our role as, one, we're trying to connect our communities, but we're also trying to find ways to maximize the transportation infrastructure we have. We're in a very constrained environment. We're in the mountains, we're in valley floors, we have rivers, we have multiple highways, we have rail corridors. We're in a constrained environment to where we can't just spread out. Our growth patterns can't just spread out in a circular fashion. Everything gets pushed in a certain direction, and our ability to expand that infrastructure is very limited. So RAFTA looks at ways of how can we eke out as much efficiency from our infrastructure as we can, and that is by getting as many people on the bus and out of their cars. For the bus to be attractive, for somebody to make that decision, the service has to be extremely reliable, convenient, and competitive with driving. So for us to achieve that, we have to have infrastructure in place that allows for for the bus to operate seamlessly. When we're operating environments with the auto traffic, we're subject to the same challenges as the auto traffic. So the idea, I'll try not to geek out too much, but the idea of bus rapid transit is really to make a bus operate like a train. And a train benefits from having a dedicated guideway where it's not operating in auto traffic. So it can have reliable travel times, it's not going to be impeded by traffic or detours or other things that might impede auto traffic on Highway 82 or I-70. So for RFTA, we have areas where we have protected bus lanes. We have queue jumps in the Mid-Valley, but those are reaching the limits of effectiveness and efficiency for us to serve the entire regional corridors. So we're going to be looking at how we can create more opportunities to have the bus operate more like a train. How can we get more dedicated bus lanes through like the entrance to Aspen? How can we navigate Mid-Valley more effectively so we're not caught in the same congestion? How can we get our buses through Glenwood Springs and not be stuck in the congestion that all the cars are stuck in? Because if we're trying to convince someone in Western Garfield County to get on the bus, there's no incentive if they're just going to be sitting in that same traffic. So we have to have an advantage. So creating that dedicated infrastructure for transit, prioritizing public transportation, I think is the key to our future.
It's a game changer for you. You mentioned earlier on the free fare that you saw a 20 to 30% bump up. Now that we don't have a free fare, did you see a 20 to 30% decrease, or did you actually keep some of those riders?
Yes, so I think everyone probably in this room is experiencing this to some degree, that we are seeing there is a downturn in the economy in our region. Whether it's probably a lot of it's around weather that's impacting and driving just demand in our region for businesses and for travel. There's other things that are happening, I think just in terms of national politics, and that could be also influencing the way people travel within our region. And I'm kind of speaking to immigration enforcement, that I think some folks are avoiding public spaces. So we are seeing actually a decline in ridership, and we're seeing an increase in traffic volume on Highway 82. So that's right now the trend that we're currently seeing since about October.
Okay. And then just one last quick question. If you could add one transportation tool to the Valley tomorrow that would make commuting easier, what would that tool be? Gondola.
I would say a tool would be probably a one-stop shop app that would help facilitate multimodal transportation in the region.
Well, that segues into Michael really nicely, but before we get there, let's ask a quick question of the audience. How many of you have employees commuting from Down Valley every day? Show of hands. Really, Kurt? That's exactly why this conversation matters. Thank you. Transit clearly plays a critical role in how we move people through the valley. At the same time, we've got the entrance going. We have RFTA doing their master planning. There's a group of community leaders that spent the last year studying the broader transportation picture for the Upper Valley. Michael Miracle has been part of that work through the Transportation Coalition for the 21st Century. I had the pleasure of sitting on that committee as well. Kurt, Pete, a lot of people were in the room. But I've asked Michael from Aspen One and Transportation Coalition. I kind of felt like one of the striking findings from the coalition work is that there are thousands of empty seats that drive into Aspen every day. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, happily. And just for this room, I want to first acknowledge Debbie's participation and her real, I think, smart, good faith advocacy for the businesses. You did a great job. She put together a really great kind of ACRA memo that she shared, and has influenced the thinking significantly. So thank you for your participation. Mayor Richards was part of it. Donnie, there are several people in this room. The business community was very well represented. Developers, hotel operators, property managers. The number Debbie referred to is actually we had a study commissioned. There are 34,000 empty car seats coming into Aspen every day. That's the equivalent of 650 passenger buses. So, I think there is a remarkable opportunity there. There are examples around the world of ride-sharing apps. Kurt's point about the one-stop app is an excellent one. These kinds of things can be calibrated so that you're only pairing up with coworkers to share a seat in a car, people maybe in your contact list. And I think the problem, as intractable as it may seem, is actually simple, and we've done a remarkably good job. As it may sound hard to believe that, but we had consultants who do work all over the world say that this valley has done everything that a valley can, that a place can. We have an incredible bus system. We have micro-transit now in most of our communities. We have a bike share system. We have carpooling permits. We are already rewarding people who are willing to share seats in their cars. And I think the challenge is, and the realization has been, that it's not enough, and that we have to try new things. Debbie said gondolas with a smile on her face, but I think that one of the takeaways from the group was that there is a real thirst for innovation, whether it's on the capacity and incentive side, using new forms of capacity like maybe gondolas, or existing forms of unused capacity like cars, seats in people's cars, or potentially introducing some disincentives in the form of pricing and the way that we do with paid parking in Aspen and elsewhere. Is that an answer to your question?
I think it is, and we're going to get into that pricing a little bit, because there was a lot of consternation on the committee back and forth if hot lanes should be something that we talk about, or can we just use all carrots to get people to change behavior? So we had quite a few conversations about that. But what surprised the coalition the most about commuting patterns in the valley, and what are some of the key insights the business community should understand?
It's relatively simple, right? We have a corridor that has a lot of very simple point A to point B within it, and then people coming the back way into town. So I'd say there weren't a ton of surprising discoveries within the patterns themselves. Maybe that over time we've seen the kind of the endpoint disperse a little bit. We used to have a classic resort community commuting pattern where most of the economic activity was in our cores. With the explosion of the residential sector and the services within that sector, that makes some of the point A to point B transit trickier. That last mile becomes harder as you see your work locations disperse away from the core. And I saw a slide recently of the number of active building permits in the city of Aspen, and there are many dots on that chart, or that map. And I think, another thing that we learned is kind of the impacts of a individual trip type. So as we started to think about, well, what trip types should we try to influence? One that we dug in on was the school drop-off trips. And
that was the most surprising for me. Y'all don't like to put your kids on the bus. Y'all just want to drop them off.
Some of you do, and some of you don't. And unfortunately, the ones that tend not to are the parents who live inside the roundabout in Aspen. And here's just a stat for you. So using some of the city's data from Jacob Solutions, there are 300 people who make the trip from inside the roundabout in Aspen to the school and back in the morning. And as we know, that stops the flow of cars coming through the roundabout. Those trips have the right-of-way. And that trip type between 7:45 and 8:30 in the morning adds 13 minutes of wait time to the line of cars out at the airport. And If that makes you mad, let me
does.
make you madder, because the buses that have the most unused capacity by far, that are only using currently 50% of their capacity, are the 3 buses that are serving inside the roundabout kids. The buses coming from down valley are completely full because if a parent's child misses that bus, they're in that line of cars trying to get into Aspen. So it really is a kind of a, almost luxury problem that they have where they're not putting their kid on the bus at 7:15, waiting to start driving at 7:45 because it gives them 30 more minutes. I have an 11-year-old. Getting them out the door is not easy, but somehow we manage.
Thanks, Michael. Many of the solutions that we came up with, and I should say that there is a, I hate to use the word white paper, but there are the findings of the coalition that is in final edit right now, and I will make sure to get all of that out to our membership. But many of the solutions involved ride sharing, van pools, hot lanes, or shifts in commuter pattern behavior. If you're a professional here in the community, do you have to come up right at 8 o'clock when our retailers or our restaurants have to be up? Can you shift patterns? So we talked a lot about that. We talked about hot lanes, which was very controversial in our meetings. And does everybody know what a hot lane actually is? Michael, would you explain it?
Happily. So it's an acronym, and it stands for High Occupancy Tolled. And so it's a lane that allows vehicles to be in it for free if they have a certain number of passengers, say 3 or more, or they can pay their way into it. Like you see these express lanes in the Denver area. So it is a way to use capacity and on the one hand that rewards people for good behavior, being 3 people in a car, and to add capacity at a fee, which generates revenue for other parts of the system, but also gets people into a lower, like an uncapacity utilized lane.
So you would have the opportunity to stay in the free lane, or you could move during the high travel times into a hot lane. So that took a long time for that coalition to really get behind that, because the first instinct is like, no. Everything's too expensive, no. But as you continue to move on and think about it and know that there are still free options, that's good. Hey, I got the wrap-up sign from the back. So I think the most controversial part of the coalition's findings will be the hot lanes. But I also think what we realized is it has to be the singular app that can help with transit, can help with carpooling. It's got to be the hot lanes. It's got to be the entrance. It has to be everybody working together, including the businesses, on how we're getting our people up and down the valley. So I want to thank all 3 of you today for talking about transportation. We were going to take questions, but everybody's going to stay afterwards, so feel free to come up and ask them any questions. Sorry, Julie and Eliza have those mics ready to go. But I think we can just, we have 2 other panels, so let's wrap up here, and then at the end we'll take some Q&A. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to move into our second panel this morning, which focuses on workforce housing. If transportation affects how people get to work, housing determines whether they can actually work here at all. Aspen's actually done more workforce housing than any resort community in the country. Today, roughly 60% of Aspen's resident workforce lives in deed-restricted housing through the APHA system. Yet businesses across the valley still struggle every day to hire and retain because of housing. Raise your hand. Is housing an issue for you? Just raise your hand, right? It definitely is. So I want to start off by, we're going to switch it around, Pete, you don't get to start today. Our interim, if you haven't met her yet, the interim county manager is Kara Silbernagel. Hello, Kara.
Hello.
Thank you
Happy
so
to be
much.
here.
Welcome her. Kara and I had the opportunity to work together during COVID. She's absolutely dynamic and fantastic, and our county is really lucky to have you. So thank you, Kara, for stepping in and also for being on the panel. So I'm going to start with you today. Kara, the county's been leading the Vision 2050 process, which looks at long-term future of the valley, including land use, environmental protection, and housing. First of all, do you want to start with a couple slides before I start asking a couple questions?
Sure, I'll go through a couple slides. I actually only have one.
Perfect.
So thank you. I'm happy to be here, happy to speak about where the county is and the efforts that we're doing as it relates to housing. And also just thank you to Debbie and ACRA and all of you in I'm going to get my years wrong, in 2024, we passed our first housing property tax. And before that, we had really limited ways of which the county could even come to the table to participate in housing. And so being able to have this property tax is a huge benefit to all of you, to all of our community. So first and foremost, thank you, because I know a lot of you were helpful in that effort. Yeah. So a couple, in tandem, there's really two efforts that as how the county has approached housing. And when we looked at going for the property tax, we looked at it across the continuum of housing. As Debbie mentioned, we are extremely fortunate, I'm looking at Matthew and Pete up here, to have the APHA program. That is a cornerstone of this community. It's something that I think we all recognize as a success, and also something that it will be a challenge as we move forward, too, of maintaining that infrastructure. But that's really been focused on workforce housing. But there's a whole other element of housing in the community of which we need to be looking at, and that goes from homelessness to sheltered and transitional housing to obviously workforce housing, and then rentals and free markets. And so when we looked at how we wanted to take on the helping in the housing continuum, we looked at it across all efforts to be not only workforce housing, but what are the other gaps in our community that need some efforts as well. And so our property tax actually looks at how are we both as it relates to homelessness and housing there. Then we also really look at preservation and conservation of our existing units. And so that goes to how can we invest in APHA to make sure that we retain this amazing community asset, and that it's something that not only the past 40 years get to celebrate, but the next 40 years get to access. And then how do we look at growing that or extending that in different ways throughout the entire region and throughout the county. And so that's really been a lot of the efforts as we've started to kick into looking at how can we best be serving our community in the housing space specifically. With that, one of our biggest priorities is that in 2018, we purchased the Phillips Mobile Home Park, again, aligned with that theory of really the preservation and conservation is we can't afford to lose any more housing. I think we can all agree on that. Losing housing is just as important as finding ways to build more housing. And so we are in 26 and 27, that is one of our top priorities of investing in infrastructure to improve and keep that as a sustainable housing asset in our community, as well as then leveraging what that property allows for building new housing too. And so it is not affordable by any means. $8.5 million is not going to go very far in building a lot of housing, so we are working with partners across the board to try and find unique ways that we can build the Phillips vertical housing, which is going to be an additional 40 units out there. So I said this to Debbie earlier, and I will put this little plug out there. We are definitely looking and want to come up with different and unique partnership opportunities to build that housing in Phillips. And so would ask if anyone has creative ideas or wants to please talk to Debbie so we can connect as well, because that is what we see as one of our biggest opportunities for Pitkin County. And then leading into, what are the other efforts that we've been focusing on is last year, because of having the housing tax, we were able to participate in the mobile home park projects of Aspen Basalt and Mountain Valley that we were able to put $3.25 million on the table and collectively had $16 million from community partners. I know that sounds like a lot, but that was 500 residents in our community, 75% of which serve Pitkin County, and that's two of several more. And so when we think about housing, again, we have to put on a lot of different hats at the county, and we're looking at how do we preserve and keep the affordable housing, whether it's intentional or, a byproduct that is already in this region, and then how do we look at opportunities to build new housing, and then where can we partner with one another, because I think we all want to see how do we keep housing at the forefront and opportunities and creative opportunities ahead.
Thank you. From the county's perspective, what's the biggest housing challenge we need to solve in order to maintain this balanced economy in the valley?
One, I can't just say one. But again, I think while we want to focus on new housing and finding those opportunities, if we lose our current housing stock, I'm sitting up here with APHA, if we lose some of those mobile home parks and other free market, quote unquote, affordable housing, we can't make that gap up. We can't build 500 units to keep some of our housing. So I think we have to really keep a focus on investing in the infrastructure and the successes that we've had, while also, so I get to say two, okay. While also looking at where are there opportunities, and really where are those opportunities in the Upper Valley, which I know are really expensive, and it's going to take multiple partners, but to be able to make those come together, because it has to take both arms of this to really create that balanced economy.
Got it. Is there one land use or policy change that could unlock more workforce housing in the valley?
Sure. I think we're looking at in the Vision 2050, which is our comp plan update. If you haven't participated, please do. We're looking at twofold of continuing to focus on housing, again, like I said, in those urban areas. But where can we look at ADUs in the rural areas, or outside, I shouldn't say rural, outside of the UGB, or even outside of kind of the municipal areas? Because what we recognize is, while most of the workforce is in urban areas, still being able to have those ADUs as workforce housing in unincorporated Pitkin County is still unlocks a lot of potential, especially for those that are working outside of the urban areas as well.
That's a good one. Thank you, Kara. The county sets that broader framework for land use and growth across the valley, but much of the actual housing development happens within the city of Aspen. So Pete, let me bring you into the conversation. The city's been working on several workforce housing initiatives, including projects like the lumber yard and public-private housing opportunities. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for the city of Aspen to increase workforce housing supply in the coming years?
Obviously, we're working on the lumberyard right now, and that is one of the major parcels that we were able to acquire back in 2007. I think we originally purchased that land, and then added to that with the purchase of the mini storage next door. Those types of opportunities obviously are just kind of drying up, essentially. There is just not that much land. It's scarce in this part of the valley. So we're really going to have to do, as Kara said, is really look at partnerships and how do we leverage the resources of one another? How do we leverage partnerships with nonprofits that are kind of set up now, like the Western Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, and how do we tackle this problem together? I will also say that, as you pointed out at the start of this conversation, that we actually are looking at this from a two-pronged approach. It's not just housing, it's also transit. There are folks that actually do not prefer to live in Aspen. I know that's hard to believe. But we do have a streets team, for instance, that predominantly lives in the Rifle area for our organization. they are the most reliable team I probably have in all of the city in terms of you have snowfall, they are there. They know how to make a commute work. They do a carpooling program. There are different opportunities to be able to make this work, and not everybody wants to live within the city limits.
Businesses often ask whether Aspen can realistically build enough housing within the city limits to support its workforce. Does the city think about that balance between local housing production and regional commuting? Sounds like you might.
Yeah, I think we've already hit on that a little bit. I will say, too, that I don't think it's possible to house every one of our workforce needs within the city limits. You have a major population of STRs at this point that need a lot of property management. They need maybe maid services, they need electricians, they need plumbers. That same group of workers is needed at the hotels, plus you have to add in housekeepers, and you have to add in line cooks and chefs for restaurants and retail. So there's too much volume to be able to house all the individual workers within the city limits. So it is a balance between commuting and housing that we have to tackle as a two-pronged approach.
I think business is really good about coming up with solutions. I mean, a lot of the problems are identified. Business likes to look at solutions. So what role do you see employers playing in helping move the housing solutions forward? Kara, it sounded like maybe helping with the Phillips Mobile Home Park in a public-private partnership. Pete, what do you see?
I would say we do have this again, dichotomy of transit and housing. The city itself has stood up its own housing program for its own employees. We're not nearly at the volume of units needed to really do that as effectively as we want, so we're continually looking to grow that program. I would encourage other employers to do the same. But that is a very costly endeavor. So I do think that the transit side is very important. We also stood up in the city many programs to be able to help with commuting costs. We do have our partnerships with employers to give resources for bus passes. We encourage carpooling, as we've talked about earlier in this conversation. So I think it truly is a two-pronged approach to be able to do this. And we have to look at it from both lenses, and we have to respect the employee's choice for where they want to live.
Thank you. Of course, policy and development are only a part of the story. APHA manages one of the most sophisticated workforce housing systems in the country. Dun, dun, dun! And you work directly with employees navigating the housing market. Matthew, Gillen, hello. Thank you for joining us today. I'd love to hear your perspective. Aspen pioneered the deed-restricted housing model decades ago, and APHA manages thousands of units across the valley. From your perspective, what's working well in Aspen's workforce housing system today, and where are the biggest pressure points?
Good morning, everyone. I think in the 4.5 years since I've had this job, we've made a lot of progress on a couple very distinct areas. First of all, communication. I think we're doing a much better job communicating with the public, with you guys, with the community. Just some examples, we have a very robust social media pages now. Meg, Simon, where's Meg? We hired a dedicated communications person. Meg, who, that's her job, is to work on communicating with the community. We have a column monthly in the Aspen Daily News, which we have a variety. It's not always just me writing that. We had Kelly McNichols-Curry on her departure from the BOCC. She wrote a great overview of things she'd worked on the past 7 years on her time. And we have a newsletter which comes out not quite monthly, but very often. And we're also we have a HOA newsletter, so we're dedicated to reaching out to the community and communicating with you and hearing from you. During our strategic plan update last year, we did a community survey. We had some in-person listening sessions. So we're really working hard on hearing from the community and making sure they're part of the policy-making process. We also have a much better idea of compliance. and how people are fulfilling the main obligations of the APHA program, which are work full-time in Pitkin County, don't rent out your unit, it needs to be your main residence, and not own any other property, developed property in the owner exclusion zone. We hired a full-time compliance manager from the FBI, and she works hard to make sure that people are complying with the program. And again, under the strategic plan, compliance is a main priority with that. Jackie, our compliance manager, has done random audits to see what compliance is like, and I'm pleased to say we're very much in, APHA owners are very much in compliance with the program. We've updated our biannual affidavit program to ask for some very basic tax information so we can really see that people are complying. So, we have the data now to show people that compliance is very high in the APHA program, and we have a very clear process. If there's an issue, we can address it, talk to people, and then if we feel like it needs to go to the next level, we have an independent hearing officer who will hear that and assist us in moving that through the system and either asking the person to sell, or sometimes, we've got it wrong and the hearing officer will tell us that. And the other thing I also just wanted to highlight, about a year ago, we also have a full-time policy position who is, I think, if you look at our board packets now compared with 3 or 4 years ago, you can see the level of analysis in detail in the policy making process is much higher. So I think we're getting a much better product to the Board of County Commissioners, the City Council, and most importantly, the APHA Board.
Thank you. Employers in this room are constantly asking how they can help access housing for their employees. So let's just be practical for a minute. What are the most practical ways businesses can partner with APHA or the community to support workforce housing?
We generally see individuals come into the APHA office asking for help either with rentals or how to buy. So we're generally seeing your individual workers. We're not talking generally with HR managers or owners, and I'd love to change that. So if anybody wants to come talk to me, or if you want me to arrange a roundtable to walk people through the process, I'd love to do that. I'd also encourage owners and employers and the business community to attend APHA board meetings. We do actually have some things both in the past and coming up, which may interest you. There's always a tension in the board meetings between, is the program for people who already live in Aspen, or is it also, you also have to have a mechanism for people to come in and take jobs in Aspen and Pitkin County. So we're always looking at that. The board's very aware of it. I think we tend to hear more from people who are established in the community and want things to say the same. So if the business community feels like they're having trouble, for example, filling jobs because of housing, we need to hear that as well. So we're very aware that there's a balance there between people who are already in Pitkin County and then people who you guys might be more aware of who are having trouble moving here because of having trouble finding a job. Actually finding a place to live.
And I think everybody should be aware that APHA's looking right now, and we've been talking about it at the board meeting, so, they're updating some of their rules and regulations for the program. So now is probably the best time to actually look at at an APHA packet, or maybe attend a board meeting, because there are some changes that might be coming your way. That's just the little tease, because I'm getting the wrap it up sign again. We've been talking too much. Matthew, Kara, Pete, they're going to stay afterwards as well if you have really direct questions. But what I think Matthew is saying is, if you'd like them to come into your business and talk to your employees, if you'd like to learn more about that, APHA is not the enemy. APHA is like the golden goose. Well, sometimes you guys can get a bad rap. I know we all can get one. But I think you really serve our community so well, and I think we all should be supporting the system that we have in place.
The next board meeting is next week, next Wednesday, March 18th at 4 o'clock in the county building. The packet will be published on Friday
Where do you publish your packets?
on the APHA website. And we are talking about a few things. We're talking about adjusting lottery chances for APHA ownership, and we're looking at the longest work history. Currently, for rentals, people who have worked in Pitkin County the longest have priority. We're looking to change that, and that's more for an administrative. It's a huge administrative burden for very limited effect, but that would actually probably have an advantage with making it easier for people to move here.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today. Thanks. This panel's out of here. Sarah is going to introduce the next panel and moderator, and thank you so much.
And we'll turn it over now to Donnie Lee. He is our board chair of the ACRA Board of Directors. And then we also have our panelists here talking about the airport. So thank you so much.
All right, good morning. We are, of course, incredibly fortunate to have an airport that actually operates in the community. It's not distant, there's no drive. When you land in Aspen, you are here. And it has served us remarkably well, and it's time for a modernization. And we want to talk about that this morning because it is such a competitive advantage and such an amazing asset that we have. So I wanted to welcome the panelists this morning. Ryan Mahoney is the Deputy Director of Pitkin County, and Diane Jackson, our Airport Director, and of course Bill Tomzich with Fly Aspen Snowmass. Ryan represents the county's leadership and oversight of the airport, and so I wanted to start with Ryan. The Airport Modernization Project obviously represents a major infrastructure investment in the valley. And from the county's perspective, what are the primary goals of this project and why now?
Okay, thanks. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. I think primarily this is a piece of infrastructure that the county owns, and it's past its useful life at this time. And so just maintaining that infrastructure at a high level is important for the county and for the community. Also, another part of the goal is we went through an extensive public process, and coming out of that process were these common ground recommendations. So ultimately, we want the product, the new terminal, the runway, to reflect what those common ground recommendations were. There were over 100 people participating in that over a year or two, and so we want to respect that process and make sure that we deliver on that. And then lastly, we want a public asset that's durable and resilient and ultimately reflects our values in the community. Relating to why it's necessary now, I mentioned a little bit that we have an asset that each year we're having to shut down for a month in early spring. And what you can't see on the surface of that runway, if you could look underneath it, the subbase is giving way, and that reflects its way through to the pavement. And with a new runway, we won't have to do that, so we'll be able to stay open. And then also, I think the importance of this asset as an economic driver. We don't want to underestimate that. It's also an important asset for our local folks and businesses to be able to have an option for travel in and out of the community. And then lastly, I'd say public safety. So whether that be wildfire, as help, we have a base operation there where planes can come in and fill with water to fight wildfires, and then also medical transport. So those are all things that, I think we want to make sure we maintain over time.
Makes sense. I think by and large, we're all excited about the modernization project and what we're going to end up with. But it's not going to be without some pain points. And to that end, I think what we really heard from our listening sessions was from the business community's concern just about the closure coming up in 2027 for the runway. And so what can you share with the business community this morning, I think, about the timing, the planning, and what steps are being taken to minimize that disruption?
Sure, happy to. So we are still planning for a closure in Q2 of 2027 to Q4 of the same year. We are in the process of hiring what we call a CMAR, a construction manager at risk. So that's essentially a delivery method for approaching this construction project. As it relates to that planning, that CMAR is effective bringing them on early while we're still in this design phase because they can help with some of the constructability questions. They can help secure sort of materials that we might need that are, maybe delayed if we don't get a jump on that. And then they can also help with scheduling. So we're hoping that by this summer, we will have a date that we can be a little more secure with you all because I know everybody's anxious to hear that, and we believe we'll deliver on that. And then, I think as far as minimizing disruption, it's our goal as county staff to really stay focused on this infrastructure project. We will be engaging with partners and being convener, if you will, or support at the table and allowing our partners who have expertise, whether that be in marketing, transportation, housing, to really come through and I guess be an all-community approach to minimizing disruption. And then I think also as it relates to putting our best foot forward, this summer you will see some projects starting out at the airport. We call those enabling projects. So Owl Creek Road, for example, that's going to need to be shifted. It will remain open, but not without some disruption potentially. We also will be doing some infrastructure preparation, perhaps some stockpiling out on the site so that we can just be ready to hit the ground running in 2027. Another piece to this is being able to run multiple shifts in a day. This is a short time frame to be able to execute on this project. We know that. And hiring the right contractor and having them be able to do these multiple shifts, perhaps doing batch plant, like making the asphalt out on site, so that minimizes trips ultimately up and down Highway 82. And then the last thing I'll say is balancing the site. So we're being able to utilize the materials that are on site, whether that be on the terminal side, the land side, or the air side, the runway, so that we don't have to import or export, or at least we minimize that so that we don't have a lot of dump trucks running up and down the highway, or as few as we can.
That all makes a lot of sense. Are there any additional efforts that the county has, and just in terms of communication with the tourism community about how to prepare for this?
Yes. So for a few months now, I've been in the job for about 9 months, and I think within the first few weeks, we started doing these road shows, just making ourselves available to different groups so that we can share the information that we have. And so those are absolutely available if any of you would like us to come to talk to you, your businesses, HOAs, et cetera. We're happy to do that. I think also we want to be a clearinghouse for the project and have the most reliable information and the most up-to-date information to be able to share out. I think we also want to be really honest with you about what we can and can't do as part of this project. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, we really need to concentrate on delivering this project. That's where our expertise lies. And all of these other questions that are being asked in the community, we are convening a group. In fact, next week, we'll be talking a little bit to some of the leadership in the community to understand what some of the needs are and to start identifying, different groups that can, set out to help solve some of these problems, like transportation, for example.
Perfect, thanks. Diane, ready?
Thank you first and foremost to everyone, including our commissioners that are in the room today, those who aren't, county leadership, our airport advisory board. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of you. So thank you so much for everyone, your interest in the airport and really supporting how we can get there. So I'm ready to answer questions
Perfect.
for you,
Yeah.
Tony.
So let's jump to the end. Let's talk about the grand thing. So once this modernization project is complete, what is the biggest improvement travelers, airlines are going to notice when they come to Aspen?
So I think this is a really important point for everyone, and I have heard this out in the community. How are we doing this, right? How are we getting this done in our estimated 9 months? Ryan mentioned it. We're doing enabling projects for the runway this summer, aside from our spring closure to fix pavement issues to keep it open. When you come back after that 9-month closure in 27, it's going to feel different for you. You're going to have a beautiful new runway to land on, beautiful surfaces, but coming back to the terminal we all know and love for a couple of more years, you're going to feel roadway differences. I'd say we're going to have some challenges getting there in the next year or two, but know that you're going to have a beautiful facility when we finally get to the terminal. So when we reopen, it's not a new terminal in 27. It's going to be our old terminal, but you're going to feel new roadways coming in, probably some beautiful new landscaping, some different parking positions for rental cars and what you're used to parking for long-term and short-term, and that will be coming and phased through. We're really trying to take this 9-month closure for the runway to do all of that so you don't feel that when you come in. You can have a seamless trip still. You can come into the parking, maybe a little different, but that you can work with that. And then ultimately, we will continue building. So if you see our model out in the back, we're effectively doing like a Stapleton. We're building another terminal aside from our terminal, so you have this seamless travel experience until we move into that. So you will see ground laid, foundation laid for the new terminal, but you will not be in that when we come back in the end of 27.
Perfect. I think, again, during our listening sessions, the business community really expressed their biggest concern, I think, was just maintaining reliable access during the construction. So what strategies are being explored to maintain the connectivity while the airport undergoes these improvements?
I'm going to start to answer this question and hand it over to Bill, too, for some airline-specific questions. But as Ryan alluded to, we are working as soon as next week and have been working on being a part of these transportation options for everyone. We understand that this community still has needs. We still want to make that as seamless as possible during our construction and welcome everyone back when we reopen. And I think part of that is gathering this community together to see needs, understand that, and the other airports that we have to work with in the region. So I'm going to hand it over to Bill just for your...
Sure. Happy to talk a little bit more about what we can actually expect to happen during the spring, summer, and fall. I know we're really fortunate to have seen such incredible improvements to our air service here over the past number of years. I'd like to remind everyone it was as recent as 2018 when we had one airline, United, during the spring, flying to Denver only with 4 flights daily, and that was it. And I had so many complaints that year, just 8 years ago, about how difficult it was to fly in and out of here. And even though the winter service was very strong with up to 40 flights a day, which we still have today from 10 cities, when we get to April, first of all, the airlines are going to extend their peak winter schedules all the way through at least April 5th this year, all 3 of them, American, Delta, and United. And up until the closure on April 23rd, we're going to have 3 airlines flying nonstop from 5 cities with up to 15 flights daily in April. So that's all all happened in the course of 8 years. And I also want to point that out is the growth that we've seen at this airport has primarily been in the spring, summer, and fall, not during the winter, because we're pretty much capped out at capacity, as Diane is all too painfully aware. So with that, we have a summer schedule right now, and there's a slide up right now that kind of shows you what the route map looks like. And we've got nonstop flights on 3 airlines from 8 cities during the summer. For United and Delta, it's the same cities they fly as during the winter months. And American also flies from 4 cities in the summer. In the winter, they also fly from Phoenix, and starting this year, they added Charlotte to the route map. So looking at this summer's route map, we've got 8 cities, 3 airlines, up to 24 daily flights. Roughly half of those routes are to either United's hub in Denver or American's hub at Dallas-Fort Worth. So 12 of those 24 flights are to those cities. And I also threw up a couple of little snapshots of what the route structures look like at our 2 nearest neighboring airports, which are the Eagle County Airport over in Gypsum and the Grand Junction Airport. And as you can see, the service from both of those airports is pretty limited compared to what we have at Aspen, but both of those airports already have United service to Denver and American service to DFW, so it's going to be really easy for the airlines to increase both frequency and gauge, meaning the size of the aircraft, as they've done during our May closures in the past, to keep us connected to both United's hub in Denver and American's hub at DFW. What's going to happen with the remaining flights is going to remain to be seen. Delta also flies year-round from both Atlanta and Los Angeles. More than likely, they will probably move their flights, at least during the peak summer, to Grand Junction, because they don't already have any flights out of Eagle, but they do fly out of GJ during the summer months. So that's where we're likely to see those relocated to. Chicago is another very competitive market where we have both United and American offering 4 daily flights during the summer months. That's going to be a little trickier, as well as United's service from Houston, where they have 2 flights a day, because the Eagle County Airport is limited to flying out first thing in the morning for those nonstop flights. They really can't fly out during the heat of the afternoon. So we can certainly have, I'm sure we're going to see some early morning flights to both Chicago and Houston. Whether or not they add those into Grand Junction remains to be seen. And Los Angeles, it ought to be really easy because we have all 3 of those carriers flying right now, and it's a very competitive market. If there are 2 routes in the summer that we probably will not see relocated in 2027, it would be United's from San Francisco and American's flight from Austin, of which they operate 1 flight daily each.
I'm being given the hook. We have other things to do, so I'm going to ask just kind of one more question. Obviously, we could go on for a lot longer, but I think just to try and give the business community some sense of positivity, I know that a lot of things can't be confirmed in what these plans are until the airlines actually release their schedules. And so we're kind of hinging on a different schedule than what the tourism economy works on, because they're already booking groups for that summer. So I guess, by and large, as we look ahead, and this is for anybody that wants to answer it, what can the businesses and tourism take away optimistically as they're communicating and being prepared for this closure in 27?
Well, I'll start. You can be assured that if the demand is there, the airlines will meet that demand, and they definitely have the resources and the pilots to be able to do it. And in terms of timing, as another point I failed to mention, the airlines publish their schedules 11 months out, or 331 days in advance. So that's kind of the timing that they are looking at right now, when we should have some clarity. So for the June schedules for this summer, I should have some clarity on what the airlines' plans are by this July, which is when they would start publishing those June schedules for next year.
Go ahead.
And I think I'll add on to what Bill said. We are in close contact with our neighboring airports, Grand Junction, Eagle, Rifle. Everyone is very interested in what's going on and how we can help the community. So I think even from an airline level, we're in discussions with them as well as the other airports. And I will let you know that right down from leadership, county leadership, transportation alternatives are a huge priority for us. We want to take care and be a part of that discussion with transportation options.
And I would just, I think, repeat what I said, that, there's a lot of conversations happening out in the community among businesses, and I think there has been progress there, but I think those are now convening, and I think they will gel into some really productive outcomes and solutions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Again, these people will be here as well, and thank you for your time this morning.
Great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, to Donnie and Debbie for guiding the conversation, and thanks, of course, to you all for being here. We really appreciate your time this morning. As mentioned, today's discussions were informed by listening sessions we hosted earlier in the year. And across every sector, we heard 3 clear messages. First, business wants clarity. Many of you shared it's not necessarily change that creates concern, but it's the uncertainty. Having clear timelines and better information helps everyone plan. Second, workforce challenges remain front and center. Housing, commute time, and transit reliability continue to affect hiring and retention across nearly every industry. As we saw with the show of hands, everyone needs those things to work well in order to run your business well. And third, there's a strong desire for coordination as we approach these major transitions ahead. We recently surveyed the broader community and heard from nearly 300 people regarding the airport. Awareness of the airport closure is high, but preparedness is still low. Businesses understand the long-term benefits of the airport modernization project, but they want to be prepared for the short-term impacts. Businesses are beginning to plan for 2027 much earlier than many people realize, which means the next 12 to 18 months are critical for providing clarity and coordination. Businesses want to start these transitions informed and prepared with predictability, trusted communication, and confidence that Aspen will remain accessible during the closure. This is where the Chamber plans to focus our efforts. The listening sessions and airport survey results confirmed our role at the Chamber is to make sure businesses are informed by trusted sources and be ready to plan ahead so we enter 2027 prepared rather than reactive. We will continue serving as a convener and connector, bringing together businesses, local governments, and community partners to share information and support solutions. The goal is simple. We want the Aspen business community to move into 2027 prepared, not reactive. Thank you again for being here this morning, for everything you do to support Aspen and the vitality of our economy. Thanks for joining us. Please stay. We do have the 2 education sessions, and then again, my plug for your headshot. So thank you all. Have a great day.